All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Wes Wood. I'm the Executive Director of InVets. We're coming to you live from sunny Indianapolis. Absolutely gorgeous day right now. So thank you for taking the time out of your day to join us, to learn a little bit about our organization, to talk a little bit about transition in a tumultuous time for everybody right now, and then to learn a little bit about one of our key employment partners that we've worked with for the past couple of years, Allison Transmission. So before I kick it off, just a kind of a few ground rules. So some of you have been on many of these, so thank you for joining us again. For those of you that haven't been on here before, we've got 4 presenters today, so it'll be myself, Blaine Zimmerman on our team as well, and then we've got 2 folks joining us from Allison. If you look over at the right side of your screen, you'll see some controls. You'll see a chat room. So this chat is live for everybody in here. We've got one of our team members, Miranda, will be in there answering questions. The rest of us can chime in there as well. Feel free to ask questions throughout this entire event. If we don't answer you right away within the chat, we'll try and circle back via the presentation and make sure that we've answered any questions. All right, so first off, I'm going to give a quick intro, which I've already started, and then we'll go into some transition tips. You know, we've been at this for about 2 years. For those of you that don't know what InVets is or are just starting to learn about it, we are a nonprofit funded primarily by the state of Indiana at this point. We've been operational for about 2.5 years, and we basically serve as the top of the funnel for the state of Indiana for any veterans, military spouses, transitioning service members that are seeking employment or resources within the state of Indiana. So traditionally, we would go out and we'd be having a lot of face-to-face interactions around the country on military installations, but we've been utilizing these workshops to try and get some of that same type of interaction to provide that assistance. We work with a lot of employers across the state. A lot of our focus is on helping veterans and military spouses find employment. We work with over 170 companies across the state of Indiana with a wide variety of roles that they are looking to fill. So after we go over these transition tips, we'll turn it over to Blaine. He's our Director of Veteran Engagement. We'll talk a little bit about Indiana as a destination for veterans, a little bit about our organization, and then we will get into the exciting part, to the Allison Transmission portion. So first off, just a quick background, a little bit about me. I'm a U.S. Army veteran, spent 5 years as an enlisted infantryman, primarily with the 101st Airborne. I got out in 2015. I am the executive director because I was one of the people that helped get it off the ground. So back in 2015, came to Indiana. While I was working on my MBA, I went to work for a economic development focused nonprofit where I found out that there were hundreds and hundreds of employers across the state of Indiana that were struggling to find enough qualified, driven people to come work in their organizations. Our economy is outpacing our population, essentially. So, you know, we were doing a lot of different efforts in the education space to try and, direct people on the right paths. It seemed like there was a great opportunity to connect this economy here in Indiana with the transitioning veteran workforce. So we launched InVets, like I said, back in early 2018. And so far we've helped, well over 1,000 veterans so far. All right, so in these couple years, I've learned a thing or two. It's interesting seeing this whole experience from the other side of the looking glass, so to speak. I went through transition myself in 2015, and it seemed very frustrating and inefficient. And I could see, not just with myself, but with a lot of the people that got out with me, that there was a lot of missed potential. Right, there were a lot of people that were really high quality people that I would hire in a heartbeat, that were struggling to find anything, let alone something that had some good long-term potential. So I thought I'd go over just a few things that we've learned. So first quick tip is humility. So, the military is great at a lot of things. It does wonders for your soft skills, your work ethic, your confidence, your ability to handle tough situations. And naturally that leads to a certain amount of confidence. But sometimes that tips over and becomes overconfidence. sometimes. And one thing to keep in mind in this space is that you really are looking at a career, a complete industry shift, right? You might think that, while I'm a leader within a large organization within the military, I should be able to jump straight into a leadership role within a large organization on the civilian side. And it's important to realize that while a lot of those soft skills do translate, a lot of times there's a little bit of a gap. And it's not usually that big of a gap to overcome, but it does take effort, it does take time, and it does take a humble attitude to make it happen successfully. So, one thing I've told service members a lot when you get out is if you think about somebody on the civilian side, think of, like an Elon Musk or a Jeff Bezos, extremely hardworking, extremely smart, phenomenal leader. If you put them in a rifle platoon in the Army or the Marine Corps, you can't put them in charge yet, right? They've got to learn the battle drills. They've got to learn the fundamentals. Now, if they take a step back and learn the fundamentals, those soft skills that made them great on the civilian side are going to make them great in the military long term. But you've got to learn the basics first. And it's just the exact same thing going from the military to the civilian world. You might have to take a step back, learn about your new industry, learn about your new company, how those processes work before you can jump straight in or move up the ladder into those leadership roles. So make sure you've got that humble spirit going into that. Second tip is networking. So you guys are doing taking a great first step at this. Coming in to this conversation right now, I would highly encourage you to connect with everyone that you see on this presentation and the rest of our staff at InVets on LinkedIn. We've got a great network, not only here in Indiana, but throughout the country, and networking and active networking. So, not just hitting connect on LinkedIn, but actually having conversations, asking, it used to be before COVID, I would recommend everyone find people in some different industries and ask them to take them out for a cup of coffee. Come with a thought out, well-written list of questions going into the conversation and just see what you can learn about their company, about their industry. Don't straight up ask them for a job at that interaction, but just see what you can learn. And, you'd be surprised how many of those interactions lead to a job, or at least the potential for a job. Usually not right away, but, over time, those opportunities present themselves if you make a good impression. The third point I would suggest is maybe considering which employer you work for coming into the civilian sector over the exact position that you start out at. So one of the key things that a lot of hiring managers or people that are making these decisions look for within companies is somebody that they can trust. Somebody that they've been able through one method or another to take enough uncertainty out of that decision to feel good about hiring somebody. So a lot of time that comes down to referrals, somebody they trust this person, that type of thing. But most likely you're not going to have that benefit coming straight out of the military, right? You're going to come in cold. There's a lot of uncertainty. And so I would recommend finding the right company that has the long-term potential, the long-term career path that you want, and then just find a way to get your foot in the door. Once you get your foot in the door, you can prove yourself, you can, crush whatever that first initial job is. And now you're less of an unknown factor. Now they know that you've got the work ethic. They know that you've got these fundamentals they're looking for. And when the position you want comes open, you're set up to slide right into that slot. So I'd highly recommend looking at the company over holding out for the exact title that you want. The fourth thing is be flexible. So, we work with, like I said, thousands of veterans from across the country, and the ones that are really tough for us are the ones that say, I'm from, this little small town. I'm from this one exact place. I want to live in this, one spot, and I only want to work within, a 15-mile radius of this one spot. I want to make X number of dollars a year in this specific field. The more criteria you put on your job search, obviously it's going to be much more difficult to find exactly what you want on the timeline that you're looking. Not to say that job won't come up eventually, but timing is everything in this. And most likely you're not in a position to be able to wait a ton of time to find the exact perfect fit. So I'd recommend a little bit of flexibility. If you are from, Indianapolis or Lafayette or somewhere like that, maybe we expand your radius, maybe be looking an hour in every direction from where you really want to be for that good first step into the region, into an industry, and then see what comes open long term. Those folks that come to us and say, hey, you know what, I'm just looking for a great opportunity for a great company. I don't really care where I work. I just want to be a decent community, good place to raise a family. Those folks we can help all day long. We've got tons of great communities throughout the state of Indiana, tons of great employers and career opportunities. But it's much easier if you've got some flexibility to work with. And then the last thing is seek help, but own your own transition, right? So again, you guys are doing a great first step by showing up to events like this. But there are a lot of other great nonprofits, organizations out there too, and I wouldn't discourage you from using all of them. Really, there's no downside to using more of them. But at the end of the day, you've got to own your own transition. Nobody's going to be able to handhold you and walk you through this entire process to success. You're going to have to take some ownership over it. And those are the people we love working with. The people so I'll call Adam out right now. So Adam's on here. He's been on a number of these events, learning about multiple companies and multiple industries, and he's communicating with us, consistently, talking about his transition. He's doing his homework. He's getting out there on his own, not just sitting back and letting us do it for him. Now, we're going to help him out as much as we can. Don't get me wrong, but you've got to own it. And so, typically, what we see, and this is one of the frustrations on our end, is you get a lot of veterans that are like I was when I got out. Right? I didn't want any help. I might have Googled around, looked at some websites, but I definitely wasn't going to talk to anybody. And so there's a lot of folks like that, and there's a lot of great organizations that have some great benefits, and companies that are trying to find you, but you've got to engage to make it happen. And on the other hand, we get veterans that say, hey, this is what I did in the military. Can you guys write my resume? Can you tell me what to say in the interview? Can you basically just hand me the job? And while theoretically maybe we could do all of that, if we do all of that, you're most likely not going to be that successful walking into that job. You've got to have some passion, some fire going into that first job. You've got to have some momentum behind you if you're going to be successful long term. All right, so now I'm going to turn it over to Blaine Zimmerman. Blaine, are you on?
Sure am.
All right.
How's it going, everybody? As Wes said, I'm Blaine Zimmerman. I'm the Director of Veteran Engagement. Wes, thanks for kicking us off, and everybody that joined, really appreciate it. I'm not going to take up too much of your time. I just want to give you a real quick overview of some of the benefits of Indiana, and also what we do and what the process looks like. And then I'm going to kick it over to April and Matt to talk about all the glorious things that are Allison Transmission. So a little bit of background on myself. Spent 6 years on active duty in the Army between the 1st Armored Division and the 10th Mountain Division. Deployed to Iraq, deployed to Afghanistan, got out of the Army as an E5 and stayed in the National Guard. Moved up in the National Guard a little bit, got my E6, and then went through officer candidate school. So I'm now a lieutenant, a platoon leader in the Indiana Guard as an infantryman. And since then, I've also finished my MBA at Butler University, and I've been with InVets since April 1st. So still my first year here. We're doing some really exciting things. We've grown about 600% this year. So we went from 2 to 6. I think my math's right on that. And so we're really excited about the improvements that we're making and being able to grow the team. And the more team growth that we have, that just means we have more ability to be able to help more veterans and explain to them the benefits of Indiana and get them in really good, I'm being told it was 300%. This is why I'm not our CFO. Really good opportunities here in the state. And that's a little bit of what I'm going to talk to you about. So why InVets and why Indiana? So we were started in 2008 and we're 100% veteran run. We have Air Force, Marines, and Army all represented. And what we do is we provide that digital connection point for veterans between when they're getting out of the military to looking for those civilian jobs. And I'll talk a little bit more about our website here in a second. But at a 300,000 foot view, you come on our site, you create a profile, and then you have the ability to see any of the open jobs our employers have put on there. You can apply straight from our website to them, and they will get an email from our website saying, hey, this great veteran applied through invets.com. It gives you, moves your resume towards the top of that stack, gives you a much better shot at the interview room. The other thing we do, if you come in and you say, I'm really interested in XYZ company, they're not in our network, we find ways to get into that company and to advocate on your behalf. We have really great partners all throughout the state. So there'll be times where, maybe you want to move to a section of the state that we don't have a ton of great contacts at or with the specific companies, but we do have regional partnerships. And so we will work with those regional partnerships to help out there. So we do have over 150 employment partners. Not all of them have got up on our new site yet. You'll see when you go to the new site, we have about 50 or so that are up right now. And part of that is just because we just created our new site in June, and there is a little bit of a legwork and a little bit of time that it takes to put up the new profile. It didn't all automatically come from the old site. Some of our main industry pathways: healthcare, logistics, manufacturing, technology. If you're from Indiana, that'll sound really familiar. Salesforce, Lilly, IU Health, Allison, companies like that are our flagship companies here in the state. Those are kind of our four big industries. We do have the ability, we do work with other industries as well. We just highlight those because those are the four main industries here in the state. We also partner with a lot of other local and national veteran service organizations. We're actually co-located with the Indiana Department of Veterans Affairs, and right outside of that window right there, you would find the national headquarters for the American Legion. We're in a really cool part of downtown Indianapolis where we have the ability to be very collaborative with very many other veteran organizations. So this is what our homepage looks like. There at the top right, get started. That's the most important thing you can do when you get on our website, and that's create a profile. If you are on today and you have not created a profile on invets.org, I strongly encourage you to. You can't see all the open positions without a profile, and we can't help unless we know you exist. So if you haven't created a profile, please jump on, create a profile, and we will start working with you. You'll hear from us within 24 to 48 hours. So basically the way the process works is once you create that profile, like I said, we reach out within a day or two. You have the ability on our site, check out careers and submit your application, and then let us know you applied. And A, the company will get an automatic email from our website, but B, we will also be calling them as a follow-up to make sure that we're advocating on your behalf. There are career and there are industry and individual specific company web pages on our website. So you'd be able to, if you're not real sure what's technology mean, you can get in and look at what the different career pathways are, what the median salary is, what areas of the state those are in, and then look at the participating employers within those industries. On top of that, you can also see the specific employers on our site. And this is an example of Allison's. So you can see their open positions there, the different career pathways that you can take, as well as some really cool photos from inside of Allison's plants. So Indiana, from a whole, there are multiple benefits that help veterans here in Indiana. One of them being college tuition for your children. So if you have a disability rating and you join the military in Indiana or have lived here for 5 years since getting out of the military, you get free or discounted tuition for your children at state colleges and universities. That also includes those that have received the Purple Heart Medal, whether they're from Indiana or not. Indiana House Bill 1010 is something that was passed last year. You can see Wes there in the background of that photo as Governor Holcomb signed the bill into law. What that does is it eliminates income tax on military retirement, on state income tax on military retirement. That's an important part, not your federal tax. So that's being slowly put in over time. So the percentage that you pay in state taxes of your military retirement is getting lower and lower until January 1st, 2022, where you will pay $0 in state income tax on your military retirement. Something that we're really excited about here in the state. It makes us, from a state standpoint, very competitive with other places in the country, on top of all the great benefits of living in Indiana already. There are a couple other key benefits. One's property tax deductions, which is based on a percentage of your disability rating, and it's available. It's something that I know a lot of veterans take advantage of. It's a really great program, and it allows you to live in some of the places where property tax may be a prohibitive factor if it weren't for this. The other one that one of my employees, Jerry Young, really likes is the discount on hunting and fishing licenses. You can do that on a year-over-year or a lifetime membership. And Jerry always likes to say that every dollar he saves from his hunting and fishing license means another dollar he can spend at Cabela's. So we look at Indiana in 5 demographic regions. And the cool thing about it, like Wes was saying, was, you know, maybe you want to live close to mom and dad, or somewhere where it's easier to get childcare or something like that. Or maybe you really want to live on a farm, but your skill set means you got to work in the city. Maybe you want to live in the suburbs and work on a farm. The great part about Indiana is in any region you live in, you're really only 30 minutes from any one of these things. You're only, like, you could be out in the middle, in the boonies, and you're only 30 minutes from a city just right outside a suburb, something like that. So everything's relatively close. Everything's drivable. You have the ability in any one of these 5 regions to get that great atmosphere and great diversity of city, suburban, and rural living. So I'll talk real quick before we jump to Allison about the different regions. The Northwest region is something here in Indiana we call the region. It's up near Chicago, very manufacturing and logistics heavy. The Northeast region has our cities, or our state's second largest city, which is Fort Wayne. There's a lot of businesses up there. It's a really cool growing community. Also a lot of Amish in the area, a lot of rural part of the state. So you really get that diversity. The central regions where Indianapolis is, that's where a lot of the events are hosted. Obviously, all of our professional sports are here in Indianapolis. And being in Indianapolis, you're only about 3 hours from Chicago, 4 from St. Louis, 2 from Louisville, 2 from Cincinnati, 3 from Columbus. You got a lot of options to be able to go on little weekend getaways if you need to jump out of the city for a minute. The Southeast regions down there by Louisville and Cincinnati, very rural community, really beautiful countryside, a lot of cool companies down there. And then the Southwest region, which is where Wes is from, it's near Evansville, Indiana. And that is where Crane Naval Surface Warfare Center is, which is the second largest naval facility in the country, somehow right in the middle of Southwest Indiana. So really cool, diverse area of different places to live. If you have any other questions about this, please feel free to reach out to me or my team. You can reach me at blaine@invets.org, or I know my LinkedIn is over there in the chat. Once again, like I said, if you haven't created a profile, strongly encourage you to do that. Somebody from my team will be reaching out to you very shortly. We're really excited to be working with you guys. And without further ado, I would like to introduce April Gaines and Matthew Carfagna from Allison Transmission. And I hope that I didn't butcher your name too bad, Matthew.
You actually said it perfectly.
All righty. Well, first off, I would like to welcome everyone and thank you for coming. You know, we certainly appreciate your time and look forward to this opportunity to tell you a little bit more about Allison Transmission, what it is that we do, talk a little bit about the type of opportunities that we typically have. And I also want to touch base on the recruitment process and maybe give you a couple of tips. So with that, we will go ahead and get started. So in terms of who we are as an organization, so Allison Transmission is the world's largest manufacturer of commercial duty automatic transmission, and we're a leader in electronic hybrid propulsion systems. So as an example, our transmissions can be seen in trucks, tractors, fire engines. An interesting fact is that we're in almost all school buses in the United States. And as you know, we do have a long-standing history of partnering with the military. In fact, we have supported the military since 1917, when we first began engineering and production support for World War I aircraft engines. The U.S. Army has utilized Allison's fully automatic transmissions for medium and heavy tactical and combat wheeled vehicles. and we're also in tracked vehicles such as the M1 Abrams battle tank. So our vision is to be the global leader in commercial duty propulsion solution. And our promise is that we will provide the most reliable and valued propulsion solutions in the world. And if you're familiar with Allison Transmission, you know that we take the vision and the promise very seriously, and we have a reputation for building quality transmissions that are extremely reliable. So the values that guide us are listed here. So quality, we're driven by a total commitment to excellence in everything that we do. Customer focus, we believe each customer is unique and that our success is tied directly to the success of our customers. Integrity, we hold ourselves to the highest ethical standards. Innovation, we seek ways to improve products and processes. And then, of course, teamwork. We believe that we develop better solutions by working together. And in terms of teamwork, one thing that we really value is having an inclusive and a diverse environment. We recognize the value that comes when everyone feels respected and can reach their full potential. So to foster this environment, we do things like hosting educational events, volunteering with diverse organizations, celebrating National History and Heritage Months, and we support organizations that assist diverse populations. So I know we talked a little bit about our history and what it is that we do. This slide here really just highlights some key points in our history. So you'll see that we've been in business for over 100 years, a very stable organization. As many of you know, we were part of General Motors for a number of years, but in 2012, that's when we became an independent organization and broke off from General Motors. And then in recent years, specifically last year, you'll see that we continued the growth of our organization through acquisition. So we completed 3 acquisitions last year, and those were Vantage Power, Walker Die Casting, and Axletech. So as I mentioned, we are in Indianapolis, Indiana, more specifically in the community of Speedway. And in Speedway, we have 10 plants housing administration, engineering, manufacturing, and distribution operations. In addition to our headquarters location, we also have these additional facilities located in Indianapolis. So we have Plant 17, we have our Eagle Creek Technology Center, we have our Vehicle Environmental Test Center, which we refer to as the VET for short, and we have the Innovation Center still under construction. So at the VET, which is in the lower left-hand corner of your screen, it's really a cool facility. It's an environmentally controlled testing facility where we conduct road and altitude simulations. So we can simulate altitudes up to 18,000 feet in the building. In addition, we can simulate climates, extreme climates, so going down to -54 degrees in the building, and extreme summer conditions as well. The Innovation Center, which is on the bottom right-hand side of the screen, is a 96,000 square foot facility, currently scheduled to complete construction next year. And in this building, we will provide upgraded capabilities for virtual system and vehicle system simulations and modeling. So this slide here shows additional facilities outside of Indianapolis. You'll see we have facilities in Michigan, Tennessee, as well as Alabama. And then outside of the US, we have facilities in the Netherlands, Brazil, Japan, Hungary, China, and India. So we're truly a global organization. Today's industry leadership is evidenced by more than 7 million transmissions delivered to customers around the globe. Our fully automatic transmissions are trusted in nearly 15,000 fleets worldwide. And that's supported by a base of about 2,700 employees, producing $2.7 billion in annual sales for 2019. And then here you can see there are over 350 OEMs that rely on us for their vehicle propulsion solutions. And I think it's interesting just to take a look at all of the different recognizable names that you see there of organizations that partner with Allison and use our products. So let's transition a little bit and start talking a little bit more about opportunities. So although we are a manufacturing organization, you'll see here that we have opportunities in a multitude of areas. Now this year is a little bit different due to the pandemic, but typically what we will see on the salaried side is that when you look at our open positions, at any given time, about 50% are in product engineering. The rest fall into these particular areas. However, most of them after product engineering would be in operations, I'd say supply chain, as well as purchasing. So in terms of the positions that we have open right now, I wanted to put a list together just to give you a feel for the type of things that we currently have posted. Now, you do have to take this with a grain of salt and understand that our recruiters are currently working to fill these positions. So this is an ever-changing list, but nevertheless, it does give you a feel for the types of opportunities that we currently have out there. And if you are interested, the first step, and I'm kind of transitioning to talk a little bit more about our process, but the first step is always going to be that online application at allisontransmission.com/careers. Once you submit your online application, the recruitment team is going through those resumes and applications and selecting candidates for phone interviews. So we're selecting those top candidates for a recruiter phone interview. So one question that you might have is, well, what are the recruiters looking for and how can I be at the top of that list? So I just wanted to kind of break here and talk a little bit more about that. So in our job postings, whenever you look at a job posting, you're going to see a couple of different sections in that posting. The top portion is the description, and that, of course, gives you a feel for what the job is so that you can decide, is this something that I'm really interested in? But also, it gives you some hints as to, later on down the road, if you're called for an interview, what sort of things we're looking for and what you may be asked about. So the job posting is always a good place to start. It also will give you some hints as to the type of terminology that we're using. And then when you get down to the bottom of the job description, that's the qualifications section. And there are two pieces to that qualification section most times. One are the required qualifications, and then there are preferred qualifications. The required qualifications are just that. So those are the must-haves, the things that you absolutely must have to be considered. And those are, the first thing that any recruiter is going to be looking for is does this person meet the minimum qualifications? But then aside from that, if you also have some of the preferred qualifications, those are some of the things that help set you apart because those are kind of our wish list items. So definitely, if you get that interview, you'll want to speak to some of those preferred qualifications that you might have. After the recruiter phone interview, we move to manager interviews. And typically in a normal environment, these have historically been on site. However, with COVID-19, we are doing those virtually. Now, I will say what I'm going to give you right now is what we typically see in terms of our process, but it can deviate just a little bit. So typically when you get to that manager interview stage, you would have around 4 back-to-back virtual interviews with separate managers within the department. I say that it can vary a little bit, and that's because each department, can say, that doesn't work for us. We prefer panel interviews. So we want all 4 managers interviewing the candidate at the same time. Or, maybe they only need 1 manager. that's interviewing in the virtual interview schedule. But typically, what we will see is around 4 interviews that are taking place in that process, and they last maybe around 45 minutes. Your recruiter is your point of contact as you're moving through the recruitment process. So your recruiter can certainly prepare you and update you and make sure that you are aware what type of interview that you're walking into, and so that you feel a little bit more comfortable and prepared for that. We can move to an offer. We have before, after the virtual interviews, but again, that kind of defers back to the hiring leader. Is this a position where they're comfortable hiring someone without, having met them face to face, or is it required that we go to that next step and have the face-to-face interview? So typically, we would bring our finalist candidates on site, maybe 1 or 2 for on-site interviews, and then we would move forward to the offer. So I mentioned earlier that I would share just a couple of tips. So when it comes to interviewing, we always recommend that you prepare for the interview by familiarizing yourself with that job description. So that's going to help prepare you, because we will expect that you've got some questions prepared. The interview is an opportunity for us to get to know you, but it's also an opportunity for you to get to know us and to show that you have an interest in learning more about the position and get your questions answered. So sometimes the job posting and familiarizing yourself with that job description helps in that regard. You'll also want to make sure that you're aware of any recent events going on with the organization. If there's any newsworthy events, that sort of thing, you'll want to make sure that you're aware of those. Have some questions. And then also, this is very important, think through some experiences that you can share with us. And that sounds pretty kind of, of course, you would think through examples that you can share. But what makes it a little bit difficult sometimes for interviewees is that you're on the spot, you're in an interview, you're nervous anyway, and now we're asking you for very specific examples of things that you've done. So it really, really helps if before the interview, you kind of think through situations like, what's a creative solution that I've implemented to solve a problem? Or what is a situation that I was in where I was faced with an unexpected situation? Or what are some accomplishments that I'm proud of? Because we're really going to be looking and digging for a little bit of detail when we ask questions. So we're looking to understand a little bit of background about the situation, what you did in that situation, and then the end result. So it really helps to kind of think through, okay, what are my accomplishments? What do I want to highlight? What are they looking for? Going back to that job posting, so that I can prepare the answers that best highlight my experience. So those are just a few tips that I would share about preparing for your interview. So then, assuming that everything goes well and you receive an offer, we do have a whole host of benefits at Allison, and too many to list here, but your recruiter would definitely go through those benefits with you and make sure that you had a good understanding so that you could make a good choice. But some things that I just wanted to highlight here, we have a whole host certainly of medical offerings, medical benefits to offer. We have opportunities to volunteer, tuition reimbursement programs, volunteer opportunities, just to highlight a few. And then lastly, just want to reiterate that for positions, or to apply for positions, you'll want to go to our website. And then just one helpful tip here, sometimes candidates, at various companies will feel like you apply and now what? Well, if you have any questions about the recruitment process at all, or if you ever just want to check up on your application, you're not quite sure who to call, you can always contact recruitment@allisontransmission.com. That is an email box that all of our recruiters monitor, and we're responding. It's a good way for us to maintain contact with our candidates if they do have those questions. So that's a little bit about us, and we'll open it up for questions at this point. So I'll turn it back over to you, Blaine.
Thanks. I have one question. So I don't know how many folks are on from outside of the state, but it is race week. And what I mean by race week is I mean the Indy 500 is on Sunday. And you guys are in Speedway, and I'm interested in how much different this week feels than a normal race week.
Well, this year, probably not a whole lot different since they're not letting anybody into the stands. But normally, I mean, it's usually pretty hectic. You know, we've got a lot of people coming in from out of town. We're right off of Main Street, running through Speedway. So we see all the festivities. The parade runs right in front of it. I mean, it's a really cool time. And for us, recruitment, we sit right at the very edge of the office, closest to the racetrack. So our windows rattle a little bit as they're doing qualifiers and running their practice laps too, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. For those that aren't familiar with Speedway, they've done a really, really cool job in the last 3 to 5 years of revitalizing the downtown. And I know Miranda, our marketing coordinator, lives over there, and I have some friends that live over there. It is a really cool town, and what they've done with the downtown has been really cool. That Main Street area looks awesome. There's a bunch of new restaurants and things like that. So right where the main office is, there's a really cool area just right outside that probably makes, it probably improved your quality of life quite a bit.
It's interesting that you mentioned kind of all the restaurants and everything that are going up, because in the nicer weather, that is a nice little break, for your teams. Oftentimes we'll see teams having team lunches at some of the neighboring restaurants, that sort of thing, or even just to take a break and kind of walk around before you come back to work. So.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't the Allison family one of the original founders of the track back in like the early 1900s?
That's what I heard. I believe so.
Yeah. So that's why that town is called Speedway. The story I was told is back in the early 1900s, the beginning of kind of the invention of the automobile. A bunch of auto manufacturers, including Allison, had this test track basically out on the outskirts of then Indianapolis, and that test track ended up becoming the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and all of these companies blew up, including Allison Transmission, General Motors at that point. And so now it's kind of this little chunk of Indianapolis that has its own culture, its own downtown, its own kind of vibe, and it's just really a cool spot. So we've got a couple questions that came in. So let's see. We've got Thomas, who asked, what percentage of Allison employees are veterans?
So one person that unfortunately wasn't able to log in today is our director of diversity and inclusion. And unfortunately, I don't have that statistic, but I can get that as a follow-up. I know there are going to be some follow-up material sent out, so I can certainly get that. But what I would say is that we do see a lot of veterans in our operations departments as well as defense. So when we are hiring and operations, even supply chain, I would say as well, but definitely operations and defense, that's something that's seen as a positive thing in terms of, work ethic, attention to detail, coming to work on time, a lot of those skills that vets bring to the organization. And then in defense, just having the knowledge of the military and how things work, that's definitely, we talked about the required qualifications and the preferred. So it's definitely one of those preferred skill sets when it comes to our positions in our defense organization. And then actually, I just got an update. So when it comes to the percentage of vets, it's 6.5%. So Fio Gambetta-Gibson was able to join. I'll just introduce her really quickly now that she's on. And she is our Director of Inclusion and Diversity at Allison.
April, do you know, is that worldwide, like total headcount, or is that Indianapolis? I would assume, for example, that your plants overseas probably have almost no veterans.
Fio, are you on? Where well, you know what, she may not be able to speak to that, but Fio, if you're on, shoot me the answer to that question, and so maybe we can table that for now, and then I'll come back to that once she's able to send me.
I know, like on our old website, I think we had like 4 or 5 video testimonials from different veterans that work throughout your facilities here in Indianapolis. We've got a podcast that you can actually access on our on the invets.org website. If you go to our podcast page, there's an episode where we're at Allison Transmission talking to one of the veterans that works there. So there definitely is a good sized veteran presence. So, April, I also wanted to ask you real quick. So on these operations positions, or like, production supervisor is one of the positions that's currently up. What kind of backgrounds are you typically looking for in that space? Because in my mind, that's one of the things that, might be more of a direct translation from, what maybe an Army or, military NCO or junior military officer might already be doing on a daily basis.
Yeah. Okay. So I know the answer to this question, but as of right now, Matt is actively recruiting for several production supervisors. So we've got the position posted one time, but behind the scenes, we really have like 5 open positions as production supervisors. So I'm going to turn it over to Matt and let him kind of speak to what it is that we look for and what makes a good production.
Yeah, so as April mentioned, right now we do have one position that's posted online for the production supervisor. It's actually listed as what's called an evergreen. So we're collecting a lot of applications and then continuing to screen through those and do interviews based off of the candidates that we find in that for about 4 different positions. Eventually we'll have a 5th one. But right now what we're really looking for are individuals who, first of all, have a college degree or some level of training that will equate to that. And then we really, for any production supervisor role, we're really looking for individuals who are organized, are timely, can lead a group. Any sort of leadership skills are always included as applicable or transferable skills. So we see that a lot in veteran groups, which is really great. And I think a good position to highlight for this group. But to be honest, a lot of the qualifications are a little bit more ambiguous for a reason, because we find that we see a lot of success from candidates, even if it doesn't directly relate to previous manufacturing production or supervisory at a production plant in the past. So I think it's pretty wide open, but like I said, we like to see the leadership, we like to see the organization, and the ability to be flexible with not only how they operate, but also their scheduling as well, because some of those positions could go back and forth between first and second shift.
And then if I could piggyback on something that Matt said, so he mentioned a degree or equivalent. And in some of our positions, when you look at that job posting, you're going to see that it says, and I'm just making this up, but it might say 5 years of experience or equivalent, or it may say bachelor's degree or equivalent experience. So when you see that, that is an indicator to say that it's not required. Where if you don't have it, we're not going to consider you. But what we would also consider is, transferable skill. So maybe you don't have the degree, or maybe you don't have experience working in this particular role, but you've worked in another environment where you've gotten the same skills that we're looking for. So that's something I just wanted to point out as well. And then secondly, I did want to follow up on the vet question. So that is for our U.S. facilities, that percentage.
Got it. So these production or operations supervisors, if I'm hearing you correctly, it's ability to work in flexible situation, leading teams of people to accomplish tasks. It sounds basically exactly like an NCO or junior military officer for the most part.
Yep. And actually, we did a presentation not too long ago with another organization, and we talked about that as being a very transferable position into being a production supervisor in civilian life as well.
So what's the general overall process time from when somebody applies to when they first should hear back versus when they actually should start? How far in advance should they be applying for these positions?
So there are a lot of variables that play into that. I think if I had to give you a figure, I would say, 45 days or less. For some positions, it could be 30 days or less, but depending on the complexity of the role, if we have a pretty challenging position to fill, we're looking for some very specific skill sets, it could be a little bit longer than that. And those are targets. So it's not kind of an end all be all, you'll hear back in this period of time. Those are more so goals for the recruitment team to kind of get through the process from the time a position is posted and until the time that an offer is extended. We'd like to see it ideally probably around 45 days or less with some flexibility depending on random variables. Sometimes, if we're filling a position and the interview team is, busy with sales conferences that are lasting the entire month or something like that, then it's difficult to get an interview scheduled. And so that might be an example of why the process might slow down a little bit. If the managers are out of the office making sales calls or whatever you have. So there's some variability there. But ideally, we'd like to see it kind of in that 45 or less time frame. But if anyone has applied to a position and they have any questions, like, hey, where am I in the process? What's going on? They can always just shoot us an email and we'll get back to them.
Okay. Now I know, like when I got out of the military, I probably could have, looked at your website and there might be 2 or 3 or 4 positions that sound interesting. Would you encourage somebody in that situation to apply for all 4 or, really focus on one and put all their eggs in that basket?
So this kind of is a personal decision, and Matt, I'll let you weigh in on it as well. I'll give my 2 cents and then I'll let you weigh in on it. So
all right, sounds good.
Sometimes we see candidates that just apply to any and everything, and I would not recommend that because as a recruiter, what it shows sometimes is that you may not have a genuine interest in that particular role. You just want to do anything. And one thing and one question that sometimes we ask is, why are you interested in this job? Of all the jobs that are out there, why Allison? Why this job? Because it's important for retention of employees that we are making good hiring decisions and that it's a match not only for us, but also for the candidate. Now, on the flip side, that's not to say apply for one position and that's it, because that's definitely not the case. I think it's certainly a matter of taking a look at what is it that you're interested in, what are your background skills, and then just being strategic about it. If you've got a good skills that could apply to 6 different jobs, sure, go ahead and apply to 6. But sometimes we'll have things like a director level position and, candidates, say it's a director of marketing and you've never done anything that has to deal with marketing at all and it's a high level position, you probably don't want to apply to that one. So I say be strategic about it. Think about what it is that you want to do. Think about how your skills apply to that position. And if you do have those transferable skills, go ahead and apply. There's no limit. And oftentimes we do see that sometimes candidates have applied to several different positions and it makes sense for them to apply. They're not hired into those roles, but there could be another one coming down the pike that they are a good fit for. So it's really kind of a matter of just being a little strategic about it versus applying for any and everything. Matt, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree with most of what April just said. It's just a matter of making sure that everything is very relevant. The biggest thing that I think she said in there was, making sure that you meet the minimum qualifications. What we don't want to see is, oh, well, this looks interesting, but if you're not meeting the minimum qualifications, then you're just throwing in an application. So just being very aware of how you're presenting yourself. And, I don't think there's anything wrong with seeing a lot of applications. I see a lot of applications for different positions for strong candidates all the time. I do have other people who may fill out one application that they feel that they're the best suited for. And then we talk about it a little bit more on the next phone call. And they say, well, I also saw this position and this position. What do you think? And we kind of do real-time advice at that point. And a lot of times I tell them, go for it. Let's keep pushing forward on this one. let's see what happens with the others. So I'm certainly not against it at all.
Yeah. And you know what, I do want to be clear here. There's nothing wrong, if you do want to apply to every single job that we have, but from the candidate's perspective, that can sometimes be very frustrating that you are taking time to apply to all these positions and you may not be, getting a call back, but it could be, because it wasn't necessarily a match for your skill sets versus giving it a little bit more thought.
Sure. So let's see, we've got a couple questions here from Thomas. So I'll kind of lump these together. The first is, what do you consider to be the most rewarding part of working for Allison? And then the second part of that question is, could you describe what the culture is like?
So for me, I think the most rewarding part has to deal with the challenges that we face. So, recruiting day in and day out can be a little bit, and I probably in every job, there's a little bit of redundancy or things that you do over and over. But we are faced with unique and challenging situations every day where things are changing or our organization is growing. I mentioned that we had 3 acquisitions last year. So each of those comes with unique questions or, processes that we're looking at and how can we adapt them. So I think that for me is one of the things that I find the most rewarding about working for Allison, because I feel like I'm continuously growing my skill set, as a recruiter, because of all the projects and, opportunities that we have to work not only within our department, but also cross-functionally. And then what I find to be the most rewarding, and Matt, get ready, I'm going to turn it over to you too for your input. But what I find to be the most rewarding for me personally is just the people. Because even though we are faced with some challenging situations or scenarios where we don't necessarily know the answers, there's a lot of experience at Allison. We have a lot of long-term employees, and they're always willing to help.
Yeah, so I'm probably just going to expand on that a little bit more, but I do want to respond to the culture question first, because I think that has a lot to do with what is rewarding about working at Allison. We're a very lean organization, which means that we don't have a lot of people doing small jobs. We have fewer people doing big jobs. And I think that culture and understanding that kind of the weight of everything is on everybody's shoulders is the really rewarding part of the organization. We are constantly changing. We're asking people to make, moves and take on responsibilities that you may not get from other organizations, which goes into kind of the growth and development aspect as well. But one thing, from when I came on about almost 2.5 years ago now, I started as a contractor as we were kind of building this recruitment process. Got hired on as a direct hire, and one of my first projects was to double the production or the purchasing staff, which is pretty amazing just to start out with. But it was incredible to just kind of see the development of not only the project work that I was doing, but the recruitment as a whole. I mean, I'm sure April can attest to this as well. Certainly nothing looks the same as it did on day one. And I don't anticipate that a year from now is going to look the same either as we continue to grow and develop. So we get to take a lot of ownership of every single thing that we do. I think a lot of people feel that within the organization as well. So we feel passion and pride about what we do because it's so important.
And I think that's one thing I just want to add real quick is a lot of people that I talk to going through the transition out of the military, when they hear manufacturing, they say, well, I don't want to sit there on an assembly line and do the same thing every day. But it's kind of like, especially with these jobs you're talking about, it's like saying, well, I don't want to join the Army. They've got doctrine. You're just going to do battle drill 1 alpha every time. That's the playbook, and it would
immediately lose half the audience there. What?
Well, you know what I mean? If there's standard operating procedures, and it'd be great if it went exactly according to the plan every single time, but that's almost never the case, right? You're constantly trying to take those, the guidance, the operating procedures, and adapt them to the situation at hand. And at the end of the day, create a really good product end result with the task and team you're given. So, yeah, it's definitely not the same thing every single day.
No, not at all.
All right, so we are just coming up on time here. Are there any last questions anybody want to squeeze in? You see, make sure I didn't miss anything.
Do you guys have a pick for the race on Sunday?
Haven't been following.
Yeah, me either.
What kind of Hoosiers are you?
The worst kind, apparently.
All right, so it looks like I think we covered everything. Thank you guys, Matt and April, so much for joining us here today. Thank you everybody. Thank you everybody in the audience for joining in as well. Again, feel free to contact us afterwards with any questions. We are definitely here to help out in any way we can. But until next time, you guys stay safe out there. Enjoy this beautiful weather, and we'll hopefully talk to you soon.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.